He was a Viking prince, but his enemies claimed he was nothing more than a cobbler's son, smuggled into a royal bed to fake a succession. For 1,000 years, he's been remembered as a tyrant who stole the English throne, a man who brutally murdered his stepbrother, and someone who cared more for hunting than he did for God. But some of that story is a complete fabrication, as it was written by the very people who hated him the most. Modern historians believe the real man was a pragmatic warlord, who stepped into a massive power vacuum and kept a fragile empire from collapsing. He was a political survivor who outmaneuvered the most powerful nobles in England and secured the borders of his realm. This is the story of King Harold Harefoot. Harold was born around the year 1015 into a deeply divided royal family, but to understand who he was, we need to look at his father's complicated love life. His father was Cnut the Great, the Danish Viking who conquered England. His mother was Elfgifu of Northampton, a powerful English noblewoman whose family had been violently purged by previous English kings. Cnut married Elfgifu in a traditional Viking hand-fasting ceremony, securing the loyalty of northern England. Together they had 2 sons, with Harold being the youngest. But when Cnut officially conquered all of England in 1016, he had to find a way to legitimise his rule with the people of England. So in 1017, Cnut married Emma of Normandy, the widow of the Old English king. Because Emma's marriage was recognised by the church, her son with Cnut, a boy named Cnut, was put to the front of the line of succession to be the next king, and Harold was officially sidelined. But Harold and his mother didn't just quietly fade away. They stayed in England, building deep connections with the northern nobles. Meanwhile, Queen Emma started a massive propaganda campaign. She spread wild rumours that Harold wasn't even Cnut's real son, claiming he was a cobbler's son smuggled in to steal the crown. On November 12, 1035, King Cnut died, leaving his massive Viking empire without a leader. The official heir Cnut was supposed to sail to England to take the crown, but he was stuck in Denmark fighting off rebellions. This created a massive power vacuum. With Cnut stuck overseas, Harold and his highly ambitious mother saw their chance. In late 1035, the leading nobles of England held a great council in Oxford to decide what to do. The country was split down the middle along ancient borders. The northern nobles and the powerful naval fleet in London backed Harold. The southern nobles, led by Queen Emma and the treacherous Earl Godwin, demanded they wait for Cnut. Unable to agree, they split the kingdom in half. Harold was put in charge of the north, and Queen Emma was told to rule the south from Winchester. But Harold wasn't happy with half the kingdom. Almost immediately, he marched a force of men down to Winchester and seized his father's royal treasury, right from under the nose of Queen Emma. Without money, Emma couldn't buy the loyalty of the English nobles, and her power began to slip. The church also tried to stop Harold. The Archbishop of Canterbury, a man named Athelnoth, went on strike. He placed the royal crown on the altar and refused to crown Harold. In response, Harold reportedly stopped going to church entirely, choosing to go hunting with his dogs instead. But over time, Harold's mother used feasts and gifts to buy off the remaining nobles. By 1036, Queen Emma was getting desperate. Cnut was still stuck in Denmark, and Harold was winning over all her supporters. Seeing their mother lose her grip, Emma's 2 older sons from her first marriage, Princes Edward and Alfred, received a mysterious letter and decided to cross the English Channel from Normandy to try and help her take the throne back. However, this was a fatal mistake. Prince Alfred landed in England and was intercepted by Earl Godwin. Godwin was supposed to be Queen Emma's biggest supporter, but he saw that Harold was winning and decided to switch sides in the most brutal way possible. Godwin welcomed Prince Alfred, gave him food and promised to protect him. Then in the dead of night, Godwin's men ambushed Alfred's sleeping camp. Alfred's men were brutally killed or sold into slavery, but Alfred himself was tied up and handed over to King Harold's forces. They took the young prince to the monastery at Ely and gouged out his eyes. In medieval politics, blinding wasn't just torture, it was a highly symbolic act. By destroying his eyes, they made him physically imperfect, meaning he could never legally become a king. Alfred then died from his injuries shortly after. and this brutal murder sent a shockwave of terror through England. By 1037, Harold was officially declared the sole king of all England, and he banished Queen Emma, throwing her out of the country in the freezing winter. Now, because the history of this time was mostly written by Queen Emma's supporters, Harold is usually remembered as a thuggish usurper. Even his famous nickname, Harefoot, was actually given to him nearly 100 years later by monks who wanted to mock him for preferring hunting over religion. But modern historians have looked at actual evidence from his reign, and Harold was probably a decent king. Despite taking power through violence, Harold didn't plunge the country into anarchy. Instead, he successfully managed England's highly complex economy. Under Harold's watch, the country's mints produced high-quality silver pennies known as the Jewel Cross coins. These coins were minted all over the country, proving that merchants and local lords completely trusted his rule. He also defended the realm when a powerful Welsh warlord started aggressively raiding the English borders in 1039. During this time, the English suffered a tough defeat at the Battle of Rhyd de Groes, losing important nobles like Edwin, the brother of the powerful Earl Leofric. But despite the setback, Harold successfully prevented the western border from completely collapsing. For a young king juggling a stolen throne and a hostile church, Harold kept the country remarkably stable. In late 1039, Harold's luck was about to run out, as he fell mysteriously ill. On March 17th in 1040, King Harold Harefoot died in Oxford, and he was only around 24 years old. Because he had been officially accepted as king, he was given a lavish royal funeral and buried at Westminster Abbey. But his half-brother Cnut, who had been stuck in Denmark for 5 years, had finally sorted out all his wars. He had built a massive fleet and sailed for England alongside his angry mother, Queen Emma. When Cnut arrived in June 1040, he found out that Harold was dead, but he was too angry to let death stop his revenge. So Cnut ordered his men to go to Westminster Abbey and dig up Harold's decomposing body. In the middle of the humid summer, the dead king was dragged out of his tomb. Cnut's men publicly beheaded the corpse and tossed the remains into a swamp, with his severed head being thrown directly into the River Thames. In medieval times, removing someone from holy ground was meant to completely destroy their soul and erase them from history. But London's local Danish citizens, who had loved Harold, secretly fished the body out of the river and respectfully buried him in his own cemetery. When Cnut unleashed his terrifying revenge, any family of Harold's was in extreme danger. Historical evidence suggests Harold actually had a young son named Elfwine. To save the boy, his family smuggled him out of England and kept him deep in southern France. 20 years later, records show that this boy arrived at the Abbey of St. Foy in Conques, where he became a monk and eventually the prior of the monastery. King Harold Harefoot ruled for just under 5 years and is often skipped over in the history books. He used a crisis to seize a kingdom and actually ruled it competently with a steady hand, but his legacy was dragged through the mud. His desecration by his furious brother Cnut was an act of pure unhinged vengeance. It was a precursor for the absolute madness of Cnut's own reign, a bizarre story of taxes, terror and sudden death. So what are your thoughts on the reign of King Harold Harefoot? Do you think he was the rightful king, or just a usurper? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this dive into the history of Harold Harefoot, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new story. The mad reign of Cnut is up next. But in the meantime, if you click this playlist, you can binge watch the entire complete saga of the English kings and queens. And hopefully, I'll see you there.